Welcome, everybody. It's 1:45 and we'll be starting. And hello to people who are watching this talk live. We are live streaming all of the plenary talks, and the recordings will be made available sometime afterwards. There'll be three talks in this session, so the theme of this opening session is learning from stories. And so we'll be hearing from the first two plenary speakers after this about their personal stories or their institutional stories. And my story will be a bit different because I'll be giving a, let me just get the slides up. F5. I'll be giving the story about an event, the history of the event, how the event has shaped and how the event is supporting you and is informed by members of the web and the digital community. Be given by myself and Claire, who's going to stand up and wave. Will be coming along down here shortly. This event, we encourage people to share their thoughts, so the hashtag for the event is IWMW18, and if you also use hash P0 for this talk, we can see, quickly identify and associate tweets with a particular talk, which is particularly relevant for the parallel sessions. So this is the 22nd IWMW event, which started way back in July 1997 at King's College London. And as you can see from the map of the locations, we've been all over the country, really, almost. We've been as far north as Aberdeen. Who's at Aberdeen? Show of hands if you were at Aberdeen. Okay, so a small group were at Aberdeen. Who remembers going to Belfast when we were over in Belfast? Oh, I think 3 people were at Belfast. And then we've been down south, Bath, Reading, a couple in London, and over to Canterbury, Kent, where we were last year, and then various places in between. So it's an event that very much travels around the country, which is a great opportunity to see different campuses, to see the sites. And here we are, we're up in York. I know if we're not up for some of you, but we're up in North, and it's true, isn't it? It's grim up north. What a wonderful campus. And what a wonderful city is. York is an absolutely fantastic place. I love it, I love it. So this year, there were a couple of late-minute cancellations or illnesses, so we've got 140 delegates. There will be another 5 or 6 people arriving tomorrow for some of the plenary, for some of the master classes, but it's about 147 delegates. And the amazing thing, when we were looking at the booking sheet, about 60 people I've never been to an IWMW event before. So again, show of hands if you're here for the first time. Wow, just look at all of those people, right? And there's a similar number who've been here, who might be in your position last year or the last few years. So the show of hands if you've been to 1 to 4 previous events. And so that should be another about 60. And the people who haven't put the hands up, you're the old-timers who've been to over 5 events. So show of hands if you've been to over 5 events. Okay, so we are the old fogies, and we will bore you about the old days, or I will. Don't let me do that. So the important thing is you, the delegates, and that profile. So that's really interesting, that. And it was, when we were looking at these figures, Claire and I said, and other members of the advisory group, including Kat. Where's Kat? Can't see Kat. Oh, sorry, there, that wave. We're saying it's really important that we make this a welcoming event for all those newcomers, and so we spent a lot of time about thinking about how best to do that, and Claire will be mentioning some of those things a bit later on. So we try to be a welcoming and inclusive event. So in terms of the welcoming aspects, Claire will be talking about a bit later. In terms of the inclusivity, I've come across posts in the past from women who are saying, I really hate these all-male conferences, particularly when there are just all-male panel sessions when there are significant numbers of women in the audience. So we try and do something about this. We can't affect the gender makeup of your digital teams, and we can't really affect the gender makeup of the people who attend. but we do keep the statistics and seeing how things can shape and evolve. So we do try, our goal is to say we will have a more evenly balanced gender mix for the speakers and facilitators, and we have been doing that for a number of years, but it'd be nice to get more female involved in standing and facilitating. And the other thing is session chairs, we've got the 50% balance for that. So that's one aspect of this year's event. But let's just look back. So these were the delegate numbers over the 22 years. So in the very first one, I think there were 96. It peaked at 198, I think, in 2008 or 9. So I was looking at those figures, and the first 3 events, it was the early years. It was when it was new. I didn't really know what you're supposed to do in organising an event. And I thought, what we need to do is to get the experts, the people from those Russell Group universities who've got a lot of resources, who can share the things that they're doing. We can learn from those leading lights. And the people came along, and I can recall one person saying to me, Brian, I got this job working in a web team in a university, and that was all what I really, really wanted to do. And then I discovered I'm just a pawn in some political territorial wars going on between IT services and marketing and the library and all of those things. And I was really frustrated. I thought, I'm doing something wrong. I don't understand what's happening. And then I get to this event and discovered so many other people are having similar experiences. And that was one of the things that we realised was important, the people in touch with each other, sharing experiences, sharing, the good things, the things we're happy about, but also the things that we're unhappy about. So that is really, really important. So that was part of it. So those were the early years. And then we realised that social dimension was important. And so we had the boom years. So growth in the numbers of people attending. We had the excitement of the web was growing in importance. We knew about it, but our family was like, oh yes, this web, it is important, isn't it? So we had all of that. And of course, the other aspect to that was when education. There was also a significant amount of additional funding going into education, the higher education sector, the research sector, and the like. So those were really the boom years. There was, of course, a political dimension to some of those things as well, because we then had those challenging years. So there was a bit of a lag after the financial crash in 2008 and the cutbacks in funding in our sector. But there were difficult times. In 1 year, the event at Reading was just held over 2 days because university was saying, we don't think we can afford to send people there, So we were worried at that time. We had a 2-day event and people said, we need longer. So we went back to the 3-day. But it was the difficult times, and in 2013, that was when JISC ceased the funding of UConn at the University of Bath, which is my host organisation. So who was there in 2013 for the party, for what we thought was the final? So just a small number of people. That's really fascinating. We thought it would be the last IWMW event. We were about to be made redundant, so we were celebrating the past. And then people said, we need to continue. So we continued initially in 2014 jointly with NetSkills, and then the year after I was running it at Edge Hill University, and that was when it was all a bit scary because I'd lost all of that institutional support that I previously had. So it was kind of challenging and a bit stressful. And then we had so that rebirth was a bit challenging, but now we've got this current era, and I think it's exciting again that we've got a really good advisor group who are working on planning on this, and now got Claire is officially the co-chair and is absolutely fantastic. So we're working together, and this is really, really, really good. So that was the history of the event. Speakers, and another chance for some audience participation. These are the numbers of speakers over the years. Speakers might be given multiple talks, but we'll class that as 31 speakers. So guess how many total numbers and how many different individuals? Just reflect on that. I'll give you the answers just now. So there have been 658 performances by 386 individuals over that time. So those are the people who've been sharing their knowledge, their experiences, their good times, the bad times, important part of this community. So it was just 2 days, ago, I was looking at that and I wondered, how many of those speakers and facilitators just come along to one event, give the talk, and don't speak, facilitate another ones, or how many come back for at least one other thing, or might be. So people like me and Claire and Piero and other people are repeat performers. But what's the balance between the one-hit wonders and the regular performers? How many people think, oh, there must be a lot of more one-hit wonders? So one-hit wonders, show of hands. Okay, so one person. One person, okay. And I'm going to embarrass you if you don't put your hands up. So how many think that most people must come back and do the talks again, different talks? So significantly more people. And that's what I thought. And here's the data. Isn't it interesting what data can tell us? So those bottom two bullet points, 274 individuals, or 71%, have just spoken at a single event. I had no idea of this, and we didn't believe it, did we, Claire, when we looked at those things? And it's just 113 of those same old people coming along and talking again, you know. So that is kind of interesting. And for me, what is this telling us? What can we, stories might be associated with this? There's so many people who are willing to share across the community and come along. It might be they've just done something that's very relevant in their institution at that time, or it's convenient for them to come, or something like that. There might be different reasons why. But that is interesting. And so for this year, 118 delegates from higher education institutions, higher education agencies, research councils, and the like, of whom there are 52 individual UK universities. And what we can say is you are from all points of the compass, almost. So who's from the most northerly campus? So the University of Highlands and Islands. So I think there's four hands. Wow, we've come a long way. So thanks for that and coming back again this year. The most southerly university. Who's from where is it? Falmouth. Falmouth. 2 of you from Falmouth. Wow, how long did it take you? A long journey. Yeah. Okay, and 2 of you, because you're wearing 2 hats, because you're also the most westerly university on the mainland, I believe. Yeah. So that's good. And over in the east, we've got University of Canterbury, so a couple there and a couple there, 4 of you. So that's good, but not quite the most easterly campus, because I think East Anglia is further east, so we must get them. So that's, of course, on the mainland. Sadly, nobody from Northern Ireland this year, but we do have 2 people from 2 of our European colleagues. So who's from Trinity College and Maynooth? So Trinity and Maynooth. Okay, that's great. Welcome. And but next year we'll get your colleagues from Galway. So that'll be good. So that's who we've got. And what are you and what do you do? So one of the reasons we ask for job titles in the evaluation form is to get a picture for who's here. So popular job titles. So again, show of hands if you're a web manager, web developer, web content officer, or digital content officer. So those were the most popular job titles of those ilk. And are you a head? How many heads are? So there were heads of digital experience, digital communications, marketing, web services, and variants thereof. So web services, so another sort of smaller number of the heads of the department. So that's a profile. And you're also next year's speaker. I would hope that many of you who might be here for the first time will be speaking next year, or even speaking this year. And tomorrow, Claire will be chairing a lightning talk session. So there'll be the opportunity for you to come up and stand just to give a talk, 1, 2, 3 minutes, about the things that you're doing. And how many early career professionals, class yourself as early career professional, can I have a big show of hands? Okay, wave, yeah. So there are a smaller number, and Claire is going to pick that up a bit later on. So you are the most important part of this community, and one of you is going to get a prize. You see all of those things over there. Claire, how did you manage to get down yesterday with all of those? Some of them were delivered. So here we are. So here are the first time. So here are the people who are at the event for the first time. And if I go into the random name picker and paste it into here, isn't this exciting? Isn't this exciting? Never do a live demo. No, it's good if you do a live demo. So, hope it's somebody who's here, random name picker. Love Hannah University of... Hannah Love. That was a bit embarrassing. Love Hannah. So you've got a prize, and I've not got to go past that white mark because I'm out of this. So you've got a prize, and Claire is going to remind me of the email that she sent to me, which is what the prize is for you. But we can sort that out later. Yeah, sort that out later. Okay, so we've got loads and loads of prizes for people, and we're looking at ways to give them out. And we've got some random selectors, but what would be really nice would be if it was based upon something that you do that's standing out. So it might be the most interesting tweets, it might be the photos that you take, it might be, there might be something to do with tonight, if we do anything special tonight, we can look at that. But basically we'll be looking at things for prizes, opportunities for prizes. So key challenges for Claire and I: how do we ensure the event continues to be relevant, the event is sustainable, and the community is sustainable? So we make sure the event continues to be relevant and evolve thanks to the advisory group. So I think this is where you're all supposed to stand up, the members of the advisory group. Yeah, come on, stand up, Pat. And so you'll notice the members of the advisory group have a blue lanyard. They're the people who to chat to and to engage with. So we've got, there's the 3, 4, 5, 9 of us. There's Claire and I are the co-chairs. I always say the most important person is the local rep. So Dan is based here at the University of York, and he's the person we ring and ask for the local issues and help put us in touch with people and all of those things. So that's really, really good. So thanks, Dan. Then we have Mike, Andrew and Kevin, and they're our mainstays. They've been involved in the advisory group since we restarted, and they know what the event is, they can provide input, and this is really great. But it's really important that we evolve and try new things. So Claire and I said we've got to get some new people in at last year. So many thanks to Carly, Kat and Gareth, who are new members. And one of the things I can recall, Kat saying, have you thought about doing such and such? And Claire and I would say, no, we haven't thought about doing that, but it's a great idea. So many thanks for all of those new things, ideas and things that we've had over this. And of course, the sustainability of the events. We really need the sponsors, so many thanks to the sponsors for their financial support, for drinks, for meals, for supporting the event amplification, and providing an exhibition as well. But in addition to providing that, they're also telling us about the things they're involved in, and importantly, listening to us, listening to what our challenges are and the like. So there'll be several masterclasses being held tomorrow, organised by the various sponsors. So do visit the exhibition stands and talk to the sponsors. They want to hear from you. They're really nice people. So that's really great, our sponsors. And we'll be thinking about things. Future events, should we be looking to grow the size of the exhibition, have more sponsors? Should we be providing sponsors with the opportunity to have plenary talks, change the focus of these things? These are some of the questions we'll be looking for you to provide on the evaluation form on Friday. And then, so when we were evolving a new way of working, we had various projects, and one of them was enriching the speaker experience. I can recall, Piero, can you remember when you came up to talk last year and you go, where are the slides? I can't find them on the PC. And I'm looking, I thought the chair was going to put them on and all of those things. And I said, we need to make sure we address those things. So the speakers will all have received, and the facilitators, a speaker guidelines document, which we tried to address those things, and all of the session chairs have received that. And then we thought, well, that's good, but we also need to enrich the delegate experience. So you should all, well, maybe not all, because there were 130 of these were printed when we thought it was going to be 125 people arriving, and then a load of people booked right at the last minute, but this had already gone to the printing. So we've got this delegate handbook, which is part about the event, but also about the culture of the event and the like. And of course, have any of you noticed all the typos when I arrived? So we're actually not having a barbecue tonight. I think subconsciously I was hoping that we would have a barbecue tonight, Claire. And some of the room numbers on the timetable for the masterclasses, to the masterclass room numbers, are incorrect in the timetable, but we have other information for that. So those are the guidelines. And then we have the event amplification. So some of your colleagues can't be here. Some institutions don't have representatives here because they haven't got the resources. You know, I know a couple of people have told me there's absolutely no staff development budget. We've been told times are going to get even worse and we can't send anybody. So, or the team is overstretched, they've got to deliver the new website and so that people can't leave. Or there might be personal commitments. And I remember this was a photo taken by Janet McKnight from the University of Oxford when she was on maternity leave. And she sent me the photo and says, it's really great that you're providing this video of the talks because I can get a feel for what people are happening while I've got my baby. So many thanks to Janet for providing that. So again, it's the event sponsorship which enables us to have the dedicated event amplification team, which is Kirsty Rich. I'll not ask you to stand wave because, but there's the live video streaming. There will subsequently be, the recordings will be made available after the events, and then at a later date will be thrown down into the individual talks. Also the dedicated tweeting, and also there'll be the brief video interviews with delegates. So again, this is your opportunity to say what you're thinking, you know, to come along and just your reflections, your impressions as to what you thought it would be, what you're looking forward to, what are your concerns about it, what things haven't worked. So we would very much welcome, you know, some video interviews. So Claire, do you think we could bribe people? Yeah, okay, right, there's a bribe for people, so, you know, so please do, and then we might have a draw on Friday for the people who took part in the video interview. So, then we have an event, but there's also the day job for the other 362 days of the year when you're back at work between those events. And we've had community-driven activities over the years. It was back in 1988, I think it was, Adrian Tribe, who retired last year but was able to come along to the event just for the day. And he sent a post to the web support JISC mail list. Who knows what the web support JISC mail list is? Oh, a handful of people. Yeah, it was how we used to communicate. And he says, I've been thinking about what I should do for FOI, Freedom of Information, for our website. Does anyone know what we should do? And the reply was, no, but tell us what we should do. So he got together and worked with the people and developed the advice for the community. And then more recently, a few years ago, it was suddenly the cookie law crept up on us and it was going to arrive real soon. And it was, what do we do? And Claire took their high profile and say, let's have a discussion, let's survey, let's look at what the policies currently are, let's see if there's any best practices emerging for it all. So, and then ran workshops and wrote blog posts about it for sharing it with the wider community based on the experiences of the 20 institutions, about 20 you're involved in. And then over many, many years, it was a Scottish web community at Canterbury, I think it was. Duncan was telling me last night. He was looking for the Scottish community and he met them and says, let's organise a group, let's have regular meetings. And that is going from strength to strength. I've been told just recently some great meetings at Dundee University. So that's really great. So in the booking form, we asked about people's interests for regional groups. And a huge proportion says, yes, please, we're really, really interested. So wondering whether the Scottish model might be one that other regions can look at. And so Claire, I think, will be mentioning the ways that we'll be doing that. So over the next few days, and I'll ask Claire to come down here now, it would be good for you to think about and discuss ways in which you can contribute to the community. Your interest in regional groups. And there'll be a session on the final day in which we can review, and that will be very much what happens next. So now I'll pass over to Claire.
Is it a bit quiet? Oh.
Yes.
How's that? Is that okay? Can you hear me at the back, as they say? Yes. Hello. Hey, give us a wave. We might do a Mexican wave tomorrow. Depending. Right. So yes, hi. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Claire. Claire Gibbons. I did work in higher education for about 20 years or so. I started very, very young. But I'm now a freelance consultant, so I work for myself. But I've also worked with some of the universities in this room and one of the universities that's still on a train, so they'll be here in a bit. So yes, my first IWMW was in 2000. The alleged bug didn't bite, so that was quite cool. So I'm still here. So yes, I've been to 18 all in all. I just missed one. I couldn't go to Northumbria, so I missed the Northumbria one, which was apparently a scream. Who knew? So anyway, something I realised yesterday as well, both me and Brian are from the northwest. I'm not as scouse as Brian. And we both studied in Yorkshire. And we're now back in York, which is really nice, isn't that nice? So yeah, for me, it's been really good to see how this event has evolved since, well, I first came in 2000 and how the community has grown. But also how the community, as we've mentioned with the regional groups, kind of keeps going in between the events. We will look at regional groups. And also the HE Digital Slack workspace. So can you just put your hand up if you're on the HE Digital Slack workspace? It's really difficult to say. So who isn't? Cool, right. Can somebody, possibly Kevin, tweet how to join the HE Digital Slack workspace? Which is quite difficult to say. And then we've got an IWMW channel, which we'll be posting some notices on, as well as the IWMW Twitter. So yes, hashtag everything. Tweet away and send loads of photos. So yes, downstairs by the exhibition space, there's a big notice board, and on the notice board, I think there's 8 little signs for regional groups. So what will be really interesting to see, if you could pick up one of the little Illumina stars, write your name and contact details on it, pick up a sticky dot, and put it under the most relevant regional group, and it'd be interesting to see how big those different regional groups are. And then if you can try and meet up with people or kind of make connections with people from your group over the next couple of days, and we'll have some feedback on that on Friday in the final session to see how that's gone. So that's good. Brian's already mentioned kind of the changing shape of job titles, which I've found really interesting over the years. And something else that I've found has changed or is changing are what teams are called. So when I first started out, that was years ago, it was dead simple. Everyone had a web team. And I'm not sure if anyone does anymore. So does anyone still have just a web team? There's a few. You don't know. Who has a digital communications team? That's a bit newer, yeah. Anything else? Any other teams? What you call? Content, yeah, who's got a content team that web might be part of? So these things are starting to change, and what we did last year is we did try and capture everybody's job title, which we did. Now this year that was on your registration form, but also what we're trying to look at is the changing shape of teams, so we're going to try and capture that as we go along as well. So this bit's all about stories, so just a little bit about my story. I was the web manager at the University of Bradford for many, many years. And I had my interview for that job in 2008. And as part of that interview, I boldly said, this job won't exist in 10 years. I was a little bit too right, because that's why I'm stood here. That job no longer exists, which is quite interesting. But what was happening is, well, what's recently happened is that digital in that institution and in others has been streamlined, it's changing, and really that's what the conference is all about. But what I really meant was that web managers were changing, and they wouldn't be doing the same jobs in 10 years as they were in 2008. And I think that's really very true. So something else that we've noticed is that over the years there have been kind of themes. Although the conference has a theme, there've kind of been bigger kind of topics or themes that have either come out over the 3 days or have we've gone into the event kind of knowing about. So many, many years ago, there was a theme of web strategy. Who had a web strategy? Did anyone have a web strategy? Did anyone ever have one? There was always an argument of whether you needed one or not, which was always quite interesting. Then there was a big thing about CMSs. I think somebody called them the silver bullet. at one point. That was quite interesting. And then something that came up last year was a couple of excellent talks from St Andrews in Greenwich, and also I actually ran a masterclass on governance and frameworks, and that's something that's really, again, coming to the fore. And I think because digital's been streamlined, teams are changing, roles are changing, there does need to be that underlying governance beneath so that as things do change, you know, it doesn't all go chaotic. So I think that is something that will keep coming up as we go along. So, hi. Slightly regret that vote, haven't I? So Brian mentioned the buddy scheme earlier. That's something we did for the first time this year. So all those new people, which is brilliant. So who has been part of the buddy scheme? Yeah, that is ace. So what we've done is we've matched people up, and hopefully you've managed to speak to each other before the event and you've met up already. Has everybody managed to meet their buddy? Yeah, cool. And I know that some people have kind of made their own kind of informal buddy partners going along, which is brilliant. So yes, that's something very exciting. Something slightly connected to that, I'd like to just give a mention for James Cox, who's over there from Oxford. Now, I've got something to read out. James Cox is an IWMW newbie. He's here after being awarded a U-Sizer bursary to attend, which is ace. So the U-Sizer bursary scheme helps early career professionals in higher ed, IT, attend conferences they've identified will aid their career development. So James will be available during breaks and lunch throughout the conference to chat with anyone interested in knowing more about the bursary scheme, which sounds brilliant if it sends you to things like this. So this might be interesting to anyone who has colleagues in the early stages of their careers or who are in the early stage of their careers themselves who are looking for development opportunities. Also, James will be hosting a meetup tomorrow, probably? Yeah, probably. For anyone who's in the early stages of their careers and wants to chat with other attendees in a similar position. So he'll post something about it on the IWMW Slack channel, so do make sure you signed up for that. So thanks, James, and it really ties in with what we've been talking about, new people, new careers, digital is changing, so that's really brilliant. So last thing from me, organise fun, very important at a conference. So last night, a few of us met up in the pub, and it was brilliant. Loads of people turned up, and it was a bit of a riot, to be honest. That's from last year, by the way. So some people watched the football, some people had dinner, people had a drink, met new people, so that was really good. So something we've got downstairs, and we started this last year and it was quite interesting. On the notice board is another little sign that just says Room 101. And again, find a sticky, stick something up. What would you like to assign to Room 101? What are your gripes? What are your moans? What are your hates? And we'll capture some of those and there'll be prizes for the good ones. So they can be anonymous. It's up to you. It depends how bad they are. We've already mentioned regional groups. There's a conference dinner tonight. And apparently something else is happening at the same time. So there will be a screening the football in the dinner hall, just so you know. And there will be a quiz on the tables. Then tomorrow there's a barbecue, kind of, you know where the lake area is? It's called Greg's Place, the kind of nice outdoor bit around the corner. That's where the barbecue will be. And then we'll probably head into town. And in your lanyard, you should have 2 drinks tokens. That gets you a free drink tonight and a free drink tomorrow, so don't lose those. So yes, please tweet your pics and we'll give prizes to the ones we really like. Hashtag IWMW18, and if you've got any questions at all, grab me or Brian or anyone with a blue lanyard. Have a great time.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Claire. If I can now ask Alison to come up and get your slide ready while if you just come up and sort your slide up. Well, I just remember first time I really got to know Alison was when she's been to quite a number of these events previously, but she spoke at this event in 2017. Alison, do you remember this t-shirt?
I do, I've still got one.
I've still got one. This is unused. Look, with the logo. So this was when the event was held at York, and Alison got in touch with me. She was at Edge Hill University at the time and says, I'd quite like to say something about the social media. Is that relevant? Is that in scope? And I said, oh yes, that'll be fascinating. And she gave this talk on let the students do the talking. And it was mind-blowing. It was one of those talks when it was just so different and we're all just there saying, why aren't we doing this? Because most of us, we were talking about our content management systems and our content management strategies. And Alison was saying, look at these tools over there that young people are using. So that was when she was at Edge Hill University. Then she moved to Bath University. I was really pleased that when Alison came along and worked at Bath University for a number of years. Was there, and then moved to York University, where she now is, doing all of this amazing job, whilst also getting a diploma and bringing up two twins, or a pair of twins, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So I'm a huge fan of Alison's.
I'm going to need some technical help, Brian.
What do we need?
I don't know, I need to either plug it in here or...
Right.
Or get onto Google Drive.
Sorry.
How do we get into Google Drive? Yeah? Okay, this is a good start.
So just while we're getting set up, show of hands, who is really, really, really keen on football tonight, watching football tonight? Okay, so that's a lot of people, not everyone. Who's not really bothered? Okay, so there's a significant proportion of people aren't bothered. It's kind of interesting. Claire and I will be checking the facilities this afternoon to get a feel for how well it might work.
I'm in.
You're in. Okay, over to you.
Sorry? That's all right, yeah, sorry. Right, so I guess the first thing I need to say is don't trust anything I say, because I've just struggled to get onto my own slides, so that's a perfect start. I came to do my first talk here in 2007, and it feels kind of emotional for me because I did my first IWMW talk in York and then ended up coming to work here. And I still have that feeling in the pit of my stomach right now that I did back in 2007. Particularly this room, it's quite intimidating, so you'll have to bear with me. I've spoken to a few people this morning, and one of the key things that everyone says about this conference is it feels a bit like therapy. It feels like everyone can share their stories and their experiences, and that it's not about one-upmanship, it's about actually we're all in the same boat and we can all help each other. So I've kind of taken that quite literally. So my stories are a blend of work stories, but also some personal stories to kind of really kind of move on that idea of this is a big therapy session, so please bear with me. As Brian said, I've moved around quite a bit, and I think I'm quite rare in terms of working in professional services in higher education, whereas I think our academic colleagues are used to kind of working in different universities and up and down the country and internationally. I don't think we do that quite a bit as much as our academic colleagues, and so I'm going to draw on the different experiences that I've had from three very different universities as part of my talk today. So, as Brian said, I started out at Edge Hill, started working there in 2000, moved to Bath in 2007, and moved up to York in 2013. And the experiences from each of those places are just vastly different. And I think that's really interesting, and I've learned an awful lot along the way. In York, my team now, I'm responsible for marketing, so I'm responsible for everything in terms of the brand of the university, recruitment, communications, research, internal comms. In marketing, we support all of our academic departments, so we're a fully centralised team, so we support our 28 independent departments. We don't really do faculties in the way that other universities do, and we look after digital, social and print, and it all comes together in one team. But essentially what the team is content, because everything that we do is around telling stories and communicating the strengths and values of the University of York. But really, my job is about looking after people. And we've got designers, developers, we've got real creatives, we've got project people who just like to get their head down and take things from A to B. But we're all someone's daughter, husbands, friends, so on and so forth. And the complexities, I think, that you have as a manager in terms of managing people, in terms of their individuality, but also the work that you want to do. I don't think we talk about that enough, so I thought I'll use this platform to talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to take you through 10 lessons that I learned in my career. I'm not trying to pretend that everything's rosy, and I'll be quite frank about things that I think have worked really effectively and things that haven't. And I'm going to be really honest, because again, not sure that I think we're honest enough about how difficult some things are. So lesson number 1, having worked at 3 different universities, I can say hand on heart there is no magic formula to getting digital on the table at a university. And what I mean by that is you can't just kind of take a cookie cutter set of things and say, if only I did those things, I would get what this university have or this university have, and everyone would suddenly take us seriously. And I know that through bitter experience. So when I was at Edge Hill University back in 2000, I can't remember the phrase Brian just used then, but these kind of boom days for web, everyone's taking it really, really seriously. Everyone started talking about this thing called Web 2, and then Facebook came along and you could share videos on YouTube, and it was all really exciting, and everyone was really, really excited about the web and how it was growing up and what you could do with it. So I took a paper to what was then our kind of executive board to get them really excited about the potential of what we could do with the website. Really wanted to get them seriously thinking about the potential of this tool. So spoke to them about all the fantastic things that we were doing and all the fantastic things that we could do. And my reception was this. The team, the senior team, were absolutely blown away with the kind of things that the digital team at Edge Hill were doing and just wanted more of it. And we had a license really, and I know some of my colleagues are in the room today, but we kind of had a license to do what we want and suggest what we wanted to do, and it was fantastic. And we got more resource and we got more support, and we did some really incredible things, which led to me coming to this conference to talk about what cool things we were doing. So then, confidently, boldly, I got a job at the University of Bath. And I had an expectant team who was seeing what I'd done at Edge Hill and the work that we'd been doing, and were sat in this office at the bottom of campus just waiting for really big things to happen and somebody to kind of swan in and make everyone take it really, really seriously and get loads of resource and so on and so forth. So I whipped out my magic formula of the things that I'd done at Edge Hill, said, look, everyone else is doing Web 2, look what Edge Hill are doing, they're doing these really, really incredible things. And my reception was kind of like, yeah, okay. So I dusted myself off and I thought, I can't just let this go. There's more that we can do with digital, there's more that we should be thinking about. So I went back to the team, got our heads together, recognised that Bath's a very research-intensive university, and actually we needed a different approach. So we just got loads of data, and we got loads of information, and I went back with some killer stats, one of which, and it'll never leave me, is our 404 is the 6 most accessed page. Come on. You know, is that what we want for this university? And suddenly, okay, they're taking me seriously now. So I knew that that adapted approach was going to get us somewhere where we needed to be. Obviously, because it's a university, we had to set up a committee to see what we would do about that. But we did pull together a committee. We did end up investing an awful lot in digital, and we did end up making some really dramatic changes for that time period, which was great. So you can imagine when I came to York, the expectation from, again, some of my colleagues in the room was quite high. You know, Edge Hill did these great things, Bath grew the digital team and started doing these great things, and my digital team at York, when I was here, was 3 people, sat looking at me quite expectantly thinking, what's going to happen, you know, what's going to happen now? So I whipped out the formula. I knew that I couldn't just talk about Web 2, I had to bring in some data, mix it all up a little bit, and went to the board with a really compelling case, which all my colleagues fed into, to say why we have to take digital seriously. And they thought about it, and they thought about it some more, and we got a new developer who's in this room now, who has gone from strength to strength, I might add. And so it was a different approach and a different outcome. And I want to kind of explain sort of why and the things that I've learned from that. And the key thing is that you can't just read a book and learn how to get everyone to buy into things, or listen to someone like me talk and get this kind of list of actions that you need to go back to your institution and do, and everyone take it seriously, or pay a consultant to come in and tell them and then they'll all kind of do it. Because you have to really understand the context that you're operating in and that your individual institutions are operating in. So in the case of Edge Hill, at the time, they were a really heavily recruiting university, really trying to make their mark. So when you go with a bright, shiny idea about doing something different, they're going to embrace that, because that's very much about the culture and what they were trying to do. In the case of Bath, I was talking to people when it was tuition fees were coming in, and there was a recognition that the university landscape was going to become more competitive. So, you know, they needed to take these things seriously. By the time I'd got to York, all of that kind of had happened. And what I didn't realise at the time, when I was starting to have these conversations initially, is that whilst I'm going in with a really compelling case around digital, which everybody agrees with, it's not that my colleagues disagreed that it was important, it's just that before me I've got someone going in saying we need to invest in a new building, and after me I've got someone in coming saying that they need to invest in student mental health, for example. And it's not really understanding that kind of context and the kind of politics that goes on that can sometimes make some of your what are really great ideas fail. So I think it's just remembering the learning from my experiences, really understand that political context before you're making these kind of asks, and make sure you understand the nuances of all of those things. But also, I think it's about playing the political game, and just going into a group of very senior leaders to say, this is what we need to do, X, Y, and Z, is not really going to cut it. So it's about thinking, how can I get my point across and get this on the agenda and get this on the table at every single opportunity. And I've been really fortunate to work with some really exceptional people who do some really exceptional stuff. And our approach really is being about getting information across about the good things that we're doing as frequently as possible. So if you're talking in a meeting about student mental health, you can talk about some of the things you could do online to support those things. If you're talking about recruitment and challenges in recruitment, you can demonstrate some of the things you've been doing around recruitment, and slowly but surely kind of understand that politics, understand who you need to be talking to and who you need to be sharing stories with, so that you get digital and investment and the kind of the management of really good content, you get that on the table. And I think that's a really key lesson, that it's been a painful journey to learn, but they are political environments and there is a lot going on, and institutions are dealing with and juggling an awful lot, and the digital aspect is not the centre of everybody's world, unfortunately. So my third lesson kind of builds on from that, in that there is a world beyond digital. And when I came to my first talk here in 2007, I can't remember what I said, but I remember thinking I shouldn't have said that to a room full of people that work in this area. And I feel like I shouldn't say this to all of you, but I'm going to anyway. In 2017, we restructured marketing at York, and we centralised everything and built this team. And very much at the heart of our team were content producers. And we purposefully put content producers at the centre of the team, and they were digital, print, social specialists. So we were moving away from the idea of digital content producers and a digital team that just kind of did everything. And the kind of dream of the centralised team was that we have people looking at all of our content all together all of the time. I'm not going to pretend that it's perfect, and if any of the team are in the room at the moment, they'll tell you about how overwhelmed they are at the kind of scale of the type of things that they're dealing with. But what we really wanted to do was ensure that our prospectus and our web pages and the things that we're putting on social media are not disconnected, because we're all storytellers and we need to connect these things up, and we need to make sure that these things talk together. And I think we've had a degree of success with that. But we've still got a long way to go. But the digital principles that we adopted as a team, using evidence, being consistent, showing don't tell, all of those things apply to all of those things that we do. And it's kind of trying to take things like the print prospectus, the things that routinely we know we are going to have to produce, and thinking, how do we apply those principles and how do we start to think about that across everything. So for us, content sits at the heart of everything, but it's not purely thinking about digital. Again, I'm going to say something a little bit contentious about ideals and idealists. I think when you work in digital, you have access to an enormous amount of data that you don't really have in other areas. So in terms of usability and user journeys and how people use your websites and so on and so forth, you've got really, really incredible data sets, which means that you know, and I'm sure every one of you in this room will know the things that your university websites need to do. And that's brilliant, and we should embrace that, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. But sometimes you have to learn to be pragmatic, and you have to learn to push on this or to let this one go. And I think as digital professionals, as marketeers, we need to kind of understand that, or I certainly feel we need to understand that and be conscious of that a little bit more. And it's great to work with people who are passionate about exactly what we need to do and where we need to go, but learn when to temper that. In 2017, when we built our team, we had a 3-year transformation plan for marketing, which we're still trying to stick to. But what it really taught us is you need a strong plan and you need a good vision, but you do have to accept that things will not go your way at every turn. So in year 1, it was very much about service delivery and delivering some improvements to tools. Year 2, which is where we are now, it's about demonstrating effectiveness of what we're doing and doing these new innovations and really getting people to think quite differently. We don't want people to come to us with a solution, we want people to come to us with a problem, and we want to develop these really creative solutions to really help people. But we work in a university and we have to recognise that sometimes it doesn't always go that way. Not everybody sees us as these great professionals who really know what they're doing and can do everything for us. And this is just an example really of we've got a plan, we've got a journey, we know what we're doing, but we've got to be pragmatic sometimes when things are difficult. And as I say, decide where you push things and where you don't. And I think that's kind of my macro level example. But on a micro level, you know, if we just stuck to our ideals and what we know and pressed ahead, all of our websites, homepages would look like that. And none of them do. Because you have to, there's lots of stakeholders and there's lots of people and there's lots of voices. And also there's lots of good reasons why you wouldn't necessarily do that. I have been convinced during my time at York that some research information on a homepage is a good thing to do, and it's relevant, and yeah, nobody reads it and nobody clicks through on the links, but actually it says something about who we are and who we are as an institution. So we have to take these things on board, and it's great that we know where we're going and what things should be, but again it comes back to really understanding your organisation. The 5th thing is something that I just don't think we think about enough. And it really hit home for me last week. I don't know how many people saw the Reading tweet, but Reading very boldly put out a tweet about their refugee scholarships for refugees. And they did 2 really interesting things. One is they totally owned it. We've given people these scholarships. We think it's a fantastic thing to do. And the second thing they did is use a real informal language they told people to jog on if they didn't like it. And the internet, the Twitter and social media went absolutely wild. Naturally, we tried to piggyback on the back of that and get some of our own material out there as well to say some of the great things we were doing. But it really kind of hammered home for me the fact that a university standing for what it believes in is so, so powerful. And I just don't think we see it enough. And I think I'm talking about it now because none of us really do it as much as we should. And I'm going to bore you a second and just take a little detour to my own personal experience of kind of loving a brand and feeling about a brand, and you'll have to bear with me for a second. Molten Brown, I don't know if many people know it, is very expensive, smelly stuff, so shower gels and body lotions. And it's the brand, when I'm talking about branding, it's the brand that I always want to talk about and kind of connect with because of how it makes me feel. It's ridiculously expensive, but I kind of like that because when I buy it occasionally and not that often, I feel like I'm really treating myself. It's a product where I actually keep the packaging in the bag that I got it in, because I can't bear to throw it away because it's so beautiful. It makes me feel like I'm treating myself, that I'm worth it, that, you know, I've worked hard, this is a good reward for that. If someone buys it me, I feel quite special. If I go into the store, they make me feel incredible. I'm totally worth spending £17.50 on shower gel and totally their target market and all of these things. And, you know, it's a brand that resonates with me, but it makes me, whether you hate it or like it, and think, my God, you can spend that much money on a shower gel, that's ridiculous. But it makes me feel something, and it makes me feel I reflect something by being a customer and buying those kind of products. And I wonder, and the Reading thing really got me wondering, what does being a student at any university really say about them? And are we thinking enough about that emotional connection and really standing up enough for who we are and how we're different? And what would a student say about being at any one of our universities? And I know at York, I was talking to some colleagues earlier, we've done the brand perception exercise, we've developed our brand positioning, we've got our key messages. But actually, if I'm being completely honest, have we really addressed this and been brave enough? No, I don't think we have. And I think for me, Reading this last week just shone a spotlight of that, the power of actually standing up for what you believe in. And as universities, my God, we stand up for things. So I think we could be much braver about that. So on to the more personal reflections, if you'll bear with me. As I said, I am taking this opportunity to talk about people as much as I am about the experience that I've had in my various roles managing digital and marketing teams, because I think it's important and because I don't really think we talk about that enough. And as I said, I feel like I'm in good company with all of you, because it does really feel like there's an openness and good conversations that we can have here. So I'm going to take you through 6 of my lessons. The first is, introverts are ace. If any of you are introverts, pat yourself on the back. Doing something like this as an introvert is really bloody hard. It doesn't get easier. I feel just as nervous and have the same butterflies in my stomach now as I did in 2007 when I did this for the first time, despite the fact that I've done it loads. I grew up being called shy and quiet, and the more people called me shy and quiet, the more shyer and quieter I was, and it became so difficult for me that I just find it so difficult to talk to people. When I miraculously somehow got the job at Edge Hill, I was on a management team. Every single time we had a team meeting, I blushed, and everyone could see my face was going bright red. I didn't know if I was going to say this, but I'm just going to chuck it out there. I had opinions. I got voted to be the staff governor, but I went to governors' meetings. I was too afraid to say anything. And it got to 4 meetings in, and I thought, well, I can't stop talking now because the spotlight will be on me. So just sat there and kind of put up. And I was sort of embarrassed to be this person that felt so shy, and I found it so difficult. And then I got sent on some leadership training, and a man called John Cater, who's the Vice-Chancellor of the Edge Hill University, came onto this training, and he delivered a termly address at the beginning of every term, funnily enough, and he sat on the front table. He kind of had this particular way of sitting, and he addressed everybody, and he was like the most confident, articulate person that I'd ever known, and he was brilliant. And he sat there in front of me at this leadership training and said, I don't feel comfortable with this. I sit in this particular way because that's how I get through it, and that's my sort of thing that makes me get through it. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel any more comfortable now than I did back then. I feel an introvert. I don't like networking. I find that really awkward. But I do it. It's part of the job. And it just taught me, it just kind of shone this light on the fact that you can get out there and you can do these things, and you can put yourself in the spotlight, and you can kind of learn to fake it. And I'll say a little bit about that later. But we are brilliant, and we have brilliant ideas, and we shouldn't kind of feel confined to not do things because we're introverts. And actually, we need to have more people celebrating introverts, in my opinion. And for those of you that are introverts, I'll not see you in the bar later on. Lesson 7, just going to make you all feel a little bit sad for a second. But I think it's really important that people say this as well. It's really, really, really okay to not be okay. As Brian said earlier, in 2011, I had twins, boy and a girl. How perfect and blessed is that? Except it was the hardest time of my life so far. I found having kids so unbelievably difficult that I just could not talk about it. You don't say that having kids is hard. You don't say you're not enjoying having the babies at home and loving walking up and down the street with a pram. You don't talk about that stuff. So I just didn't talk about that stuff. But I found it hard. I lived in Bath. I lived away from my family. My husband was at work all day. One of them, the little boy, the bigger one, can't get my left and right, but the little boy, he had reflux, he cried all the time, I couldn't hold my daughter, it was really, 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 really hard. So what does any self-respecting person suffering from postnatal depression do? She goes back to work. And she goes back to work when they're 7.5 months and wrestles with the whole nursery and juggling childcare and so on. And she goes back to a new boss and a team with their ideals here, and this is how we have to do digital, and a new boss who wants to do it all of that way, and sandwiches herself in the middle of this, and she cracks. You know, I literally had this moment where I woke up one morning and I begged my husband not to leave me because I just could not function anymore, and it was really hard. And I took 6 weeks off work for depression and stress, and I went away and kind of got some help. Someone else took care of the kids for a while and kind of gave myself that time and found myself again. And I came back to work and there'd been whisperings and murmurings, why she's off for 6 weeks again, she's having another baby, you know, all of this kind of what's going on. And I just thought, I sat in my office one day and I just thought, I'm going to have to tell them the truth. I felt sort of compelled to tell them the truth. So I walked into the office, largely males in the office at the time, with the exception of one of my colleagues up there, largely male, largely introverts, and I said, oh, you all know I've been off 6 weeks. The thing is, had postnatal depression, came back, it's been a bit stressful, really suffered with stress, couldn't do it anymore. And I was just completely honest and open about what had happened. My reaction, as you can expect, oh my God, she's talking about really personal stuff. And it was awkward, I'm not going to lie. But the really powerful thing from that was that afterwards, after I'd walked away and they'd kind of awkwardly gone back to their desks, is people came into my office and just went, my God, thank you for saying that, because I've suffered with this and I struggle with that. And thank you for being honest and actually telling it how it is. And I hope my colleagues now will testify that I'm open about talking about this kind of stuff. And I think it's really important that you are, and that we all recognise and realise that we're all humans and we all have stuff that we're dealing with, and it's hard, and you don't just put it at the door when you come into work, because sometimes it bleeds in, and you know, life can get too much and life can get really tough. And it's not just because you've had kids and one of them cries all the time. Sometimes it just is. And I think it's important that we talk about it. So I'm kind of sorry for hijacking this presentation with that, but I thought it was important to say. Lesson 8, be a cheerleader. I spoke about John Cater from Edge Hill before, because he's someone that sticks in my mind as what a leader should really be. I saw some colleagues from Edge Hill before, and I said, Edge Hill still has my heart, and it does, because this man and the leadership team really made you feel a part of what they were about. They really feel like you had a place, they knew your names, they wanted to kind of chat to you informally. There was no, you know, I'm the big important, you're just kind of nobody who looks after the website. It really made you feel a part of that community. And I think I recognise now, Dan, wherever he is, likes to tell me about, you know, that I'm fairly senior now in my role, and I have responsibility for people, which kind of freaks me out. But, you know, I think it's important that we look at leaders that we aspire to be. We think about the kind of characteristics that we like in people, and that we try and emulate some of those things as much as we can and make people feel something, feel part of an institution. But quite critically, I've been doing a lot of work recently, a lot of discussion groups following the discussions around career progression for women, and around gender pay gap and some of the challenges that women in particular feel. And I think we as women have a responsibility to be cheerleaders. And what I mean by that is a responsibility to try and motivate people, try and encourage people to do something quite differently, try and recognise some of the challenges that people are dealing with, and really kind of be there for each other and try and help each other. And that's one of the reasons I love this conference, because even more broadly, I think that's what this is about. This is about us helping each other and not kind of saying, oh, you're not doing quite as well as we are because we've got 8 people and you're still only on 4, but actually helping and sharing and trying to provide that support network. My second to last story is don't be too pig-headed to learn from others. When I was at the University of Bath, I really felt I'd managed this team, I'd grown this team, we'd made huge strides in terms of the content and information we were developing online. We'd brought in faculty teams. I really felt that we'd moved things and moved the direction of digital and more broadly marketing in the time I'd been there. And as I'd said, I came back from maternity leave, I had a new boss, and he sat me down one day and he said, you know, everybody hates kind of what you're doing and you've not engaged your stakeholders. And I was just like, you don't know what you're talking about. Because I took this paper to the board, I took this paper to the board, I did this presentation here, you know, don't tell me I didn't engage my stakeholders. And he just said, you didn't. And I couldn't take it. And I found it really, really difficult for someone to come in and criticise what I thought was this incredible thing that I'd done. And I found it really, really difficult to kind of take that on and learn anything from it. And ultimately, I left the university, and it wasn't just that reason. But it was one of the things that kind of stuck with me, where I thought, you don't appreciate just what an incredible thing that I've done. And I had this chip on my shoulder for quite a while. And then in 2017, as I'd said, we're restructuring marketing at York. And there's a lady who's our Director of Information Services. I don't know if any of you will know her. Her name's Heidi Fraser-Krauss. She's a bit like my John Cater. I sort of have her on this pedestal up here. And I really, really look up to this lady. And I really like what she stands for and what she's about. And she was really supportive of the marketing restructure, which took some of her resource and moved it into the central team. She was a huge advocate for what we were trying to do. And I saw her in a cafe one day, and we were just kind of having a chat about how everything was going. And she'd said, I expected to have more communication from you through this process. And I said, oh, you know, I've been busy, you know, I've been doing this and I've been doing that. And yeah, no, I kept meaning to tell people, but you know what it's like. And she just looked at me really pointedly and said, you dropped the ball, Alison. And honestly, it was like a dagger through my heart, this woman that I respected so much, to actually say, you've messed up here. And it was at that moment that I felt incredibly disappointed in myself that I had, but it kind of took me back to this place at Bath, where I was just too pig-headed to learn and understand that somebody with more experience than me, who'd actually gone out and talked to people that I clearly hadn't, I was too pig-headed to learn anything from that. And I think there was a real lesson for me in, don't be so pig-headed. If you don't like it, go away, chew it over, think about it, but try and learn the lesson from doing that. And I hope I'll never, ever do that again, because it really took somebody to say something to me that massively disappointed me for me to kind of learn that was true. And actually, if I was being honest, I was in my comfort zone. I'm quite comfortable telling the board and so on and so forth what we need to do, but to get out with people who might feel something about what we're doing, it was a little bit more challenging, and so I didn't do it as much as I should have done. And the final one, feel the fear and do it anyway. I did this talk in 2007 because I was seeing a coach at the university, at Hull University, and wanted to overcome this fear I had. I knew I was somebody with lots of opinions, but this fear that I had of really talking and putting myself out there and talking about the things that I believed in and felt were really important. And stupidly, I could have gone to any committee in the university and talked about something, but I decided I'd just go for broke, and I put in a submission for the web managers workshop, and Brian accepted it, and I ended up talking in front of, I think, 200 people or so, and it was a baptism of fire, but I never looked back from that because it gave me the confidence to do different things in my career. So for me, it was really monumental, and probably why I feel kind of emotional about this today, because it was a really, really big deal for me. So I just want to end by saying, if you've liked anything that I said, then feel the fear, put yourself forward, do some of this kind of stuff. If you think that I talk rubbish, then feel the fear and put yourself forward and do some of this stuff, because unless you do, Brian will ask me back again, and you'll have to listen to the waffle again next year. Thank you very much.
Wow, wasn't that amazing? I have to, is this on? Yep. I have to say that most of the submissions for talks that came in, we reviewed the abstracts, we decided if it was relevant, we decided to. But for Alison, we says, oh no, Alison's going to talk, and it doesn't matter what she talks about because we know she's great. And that was absolutely amazing. That was really fantastic. And thanks for sharing all of those very personal stories. So we have time, we have about a couple of minutes, probably about 3 questions. Claire and I have the voice mics, so can I have a hand for any questions? Kirsty, any remote ones? Okay. Claire.
We should not warn wedges.
And if people can introduce themselves and the name of their institution when they ask the questions, remember it's being recorded.
Hi Alison, it's Mike McConnell here from the University of Aberdeen. I'm one of the old lags, old enough to remember your first talk. I was just saying to my newbie colleague here, Megan, put her on the spot, that your first talk in 2007, I would never have guessed the honesty you've shown here today, and that's really courageous, because I remember it was the talk at the conference, and everyone was going away saying, oh God, she's amazing, Alison. I mean, I would never have understood that you had such self-doubt, and so it's really courageous to come and do that today. So just a comment, really, well done.
Thank you.
Right at the back. Claire, they are playing this game, keeping us fit. Thank you.
Oh, hi. Paul Bradley, I'm from Equify, I'm a commercial supplier. I've got a question. If you had to pick out of that 10, what would be your number one?
Probably because it's so personal, it's talking about mental health and the comment that Mike's just made, actually being honest. Because I think the thing that I've always had a thing that anyone more senior than me, I'm so intimidated by them and they're so different to me. And actually, I think it's because people aren't honest enough. Lots of people find this kind of stuff hard. I think actually the people that find it easier are in the minority. So for me, that's the kind of biggest lesson. Be honest and be human.
And do you find the people that work for you reflect that back? They're happy to
I hope
talk to you about that
so. Some
stuff?
of them are in the audience.
Okay. Well, I don't want to put them
They'll
on
tell
the
me
spot.
later.
Cheers.
Time for one more question. And if not,
Can I come back and work for you?
these are the opportunities. So you might be meeting opportunities to meet future bosses and the like. As in fact, Alison, you didn't tell that story. Do you want to tell your story about when you first spoke and who your future boss was there?
Oh, Peter Reader.
Peter Reader.
You can tell it.
Right. So Alison spoke, and as Mike said, it was absolutely fantastic. The head of marketing, was it? A director of marketing, Peter Reader, was there, spoke the next day. Marketing man takes his tie off, was the title of his talk. And I spoke to him when I got back, and we were saying, Alison, wasn't she great? You know, we should be doing this. Everybody was saying that. Then Alison, if I can tell that story, Alison sent me an email to say, there's a job coming up at Bath University, but you need a degree, and I haven't got a degree. Is it worth me applying? And I said, go for it, because I've spoken to you, and it'll give you the job, I think. You know, it's a real opportunity, so do go for it. So there's all those future career opportunities from speaking at events like this. So thank you, and can we show Alison? I appreciate it. And Alison will be around this evening at the meal. She loves the community so much, she's forgoing 9th anniversary wedding celebrations to be here. And so that was very much the personal stories that we've heard from Alison. Now we're going to move on to some institutional stories, and we have two speakers in this next session. We have Jane Van der Ban and Chris Scott. Are you got the technology sorted?
Nearly there. So, are we good? Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Alison, well, yeah, what a fantastic talk. Thank you. It's just, I always feel like we need 5 minutes of just quiet reflection. That was very profound, and I thank you too for validating how I'm feeling right now. So we're going to be, Jane, who's sitting here, and I will be talking about some work at Birkbeck that happened a year or so ago. First, actually, I just wanted to say thanks to Brian and Claire and the team that have put this event together. And over the years, it's just, I don't know, it just seems to go on and on as a fantastic event, but community as well. You know, picking up on what Alison was saying about the culture of things and that culture that Brian and Claire have created. It's a really special thing. You know, you don't see that at other events and other conferences. So I just wanted to applaud that. So yeah, we're going to be talking about customer journey mapping, something that I think others are also talking about this conference. First, a few quick facts about me. So I'm one of the founders of an agency called Headscape. We set up in 2002. My colleagues, Marcus Lillington, who's sat there, and Paul Berg, I don't know if he's here yet. I think he's still on his way. We set it up in 2002. We met actually in a .com, and we'd worked together for a year and a bit in a .com that did the thing that all decent .coms did, and in January 2002 it exploded spectacularly, spitting us out, jobless. And 2 weeks later, Headscape was born. The other quick fact is that I'm not entirely of the dark side. I was actually a member of staff in the School of Electronics and Computer Science at the University of Southampton for 10 years, way back a little while ago. Anyway, enough about me. Here's what we're going to cover. So, some general stuff about user journey mapping, how it works, good things to do, what not to do. Then I'd like to get into some detail of a specific journey that we mapped with Birkbeck. And then I'll pass over to Jane to make sense of it all. Okay? And I ask you to bear with me for the next few slides, because before I talk about users and journey mapping and so on, I want to start by thinking a bit about brand. I'm slightly nervous with the head of marketing sat right in front of me. But why do I want to talk about brand? It's because I think user journeys are, to a large extent, stories of how users interact with brands. What's brand? Brand is, it's construct that conveys attributes of a product or a service or an organization. Before digital came along, brand was communicated mainly at a distance. So it might, for example, have been communicated through an image. and here's an image that's a very powerful one of a guy called Blackbeard. You might have seen this image before. It's quite widely used image when pirates are talked about. And in the spirit of competitions, I've got a little competition for you. I didn't know there were going to be all these competitions, so you've somewhat stolen my thunder. But anyway, right, are you ready? The first person who can tweet with the IWMW 18 hashtag the actual name of Blackbeard, see me at the end, to win a veritable treasure trove of doubloons and pieces of 8. So get on there quickly. First up wins that treasure trove. Okay, so Blackbeard cultivated this fantastic image. Staring eyes, long beard, of course, the smoking ends, a couple of muskets there ready for action. The sophisticated Blackbeard took things a step further forward. And what he did was develop this flag. We might call it a logo. And he did that to communicate his brand promise. It's pretty clear what his brand promise was. He promised terror, death, destruction. I think that probably sums it up pretty succinctly. And I think users of Blackbeard's service were typically not repeat customers. They weren't going to come back after a dose of the treatment they'd have got from Blackbeard. Fortunately, for most seagoers, they only got that experience if they actually encountered him on the high seas. But I think it's a great example of a brand in action. Put yourself in the place of some seafarer, seeing the flag, this logo coming over the horizon, and the fear that would have struck. Just think how much more fearful you might be if you've heard the rumours and the stories around the port or on the ship. In a digital age, it brings that whole brand experience closer to the user. It's there all the time, it's everywhere, it's with users persistently. I guess if Blackbeard were around now, he'd have a YouTube channel, he'd have social media feeds, he'd have a game franchise. He was a sophisticated guy, he'd have all that stuff. We can learn from pirates in other ways too. What else do pirates do well? Well, of course, they're well known for map making. Bear with me for one more slide through this pirate stuff. Here's your typical pirate map. X marks the spot where the treasure is, of course. But note the dotted line, it's the journey. And that's what I think we're interested in here. So we're interested in making that journey as simple as possible so that anyone following it can avoid the swamps, the elephant traps, the rampaging marauders, whatever hazards there are along the way. So we're not just dealing with pirates. You aren't dealing in looting and pillaging and destruction, or at least not all the time. But those of you in HE are dealing with users' experiences just as much, in fact, more so. And I think from a brand perspective, we can sum up one big difference between you and Blackbeard as follows. And I think this is really important. that your brand is no longer what you say it is as an organization. It's what your users are saying it is. And that, I think, is really key. So in this digital age, it's your brand is what your users are saying it is. Okay, so you've got many users, many audiences. The people in those audiences are journeying with you. They've got a huge range of different interactions, of perceptions, of thoughts, of expectations about your organization. The emotion stuff that Alison was talking about. With Blackbeard, it was pretty simple. It was fear, or fear and destruction. That was about it. For you and your organizations, it's far, far more complicated. So, shouldn't we be seeking to understand and model those journeys that your users are taking? Shouldn't we be seeking that in understanding if we're going to serve those users well? If we're going to encourage them to tell others good things about your organization? If we're going to continue to engage with them over the longer term? I think you owe it to your users to understand and empathize with them. So all of these perceptions, these thoughts, these expectations, they change with time, but they also depend on the different contacts that users have with your brand. So let's call those contacts, in the jargon, touch points. And touch points can be direct, so it might be someone coming to your website, it might be someone calling a helpline or inquiry line, it might be someone making an open day booking, whatever, or it can be indirect, it can be someone talking about your organization in social media, for example. I think what's important to realize is that every interaction, there's an opportunity for you to win or for you to lose. And there's an opportunity to win by influencing what the user's experience is, to influence what they think, their perceptions, whether they are going to go on to achieve a goal or complete a task, to feel positive about you, to make a good recommendation, to take action. I think the flip side is, the downside with digital, you know, in Blackbeard's days, you might have known a dozen or 2 dozen people. What's the average number of friends on Facebook now? 300 plus, probably. So you can reach, with negative comments, huge audiences. So the potential downside is huge. It's well illustrated by a story that some of you might have heard from British Airways from a number of years ago. A customer had their baggage lost. So they took out a promoted tweet that evening because they were so incensed. The tweet read, "Don't fly at British Airways, their customer service is horrendous." That's what happened. There was a bit of a Twitter storm over it. British Airways at the time, and I think this was 2013, they only monitored social media during 9 to 5 business hours. So they had the complete overnight. When the storm raged, they came into the office in the morning only to discover they had a PR disaster on their hands. And it was because they didn't understand that scenario in a customer journey with a customer who'd lost their baggage. And I think that comes on to this question of the big picture. And it's one of the real advantages of this technique called user journey mapping. Helping an organization to assemble a common big picture of user journeys. And I think in most many and probably most organisations, there's no big picture of the users and their journeys with you. I think it's something that's often ignored in UX design and digital development because everything is kept narrow and just on digital rather than looking at the bigger picture. There are many departments, many functions in your organisation that have got a stake in relationships with your users. And it's hard to get them together. It's not an easy thing. It takes intentional effort to get them together and to do that common learning. But if you are putting out inconsistent messages or you're providing inconsistent service to your users, then these accidents can happen and the ripples, the consequences can carry a long way. Okay, so what's the challenge? The challenge is twofold, I think. We want to design great, consistent user experiences, consistent across not just digital, but that extend beyond digital. And we also want to ensure that there's deep, sustained understanding of users and their journeys across an organisation. So how might we meet those challenges? Well, we might think of doing things like good internal comms or of talking to lots of stakeholders. What I'm suggesting, what Jane and I are suggesting from our experience is that there's a better way, there's a method, there's a technique to use, and it's called journey mapping. So what is this mapping then? Let me briefly describe and if you like, break it down into its component parts. So firstly, I say that it's a foundation for good user experience design. The outputs from user journey mapping feed into the design of better processes, better user interfaces, better user experience. So it's a kind of bridge between user research and the design processes. So moving on to the Birkbeck case study, let's look at what we did there and the process that we went through. So we started off with some user research. What we did was we did one-to-one interviews with a whole load of students. We did some small group workshops with students. And all of that fed into the process, and Jane will talk about the results shortly. But let's look at the anatomy of a user journey. So here's a timeline. Pretty simple. Not much to say about that. The next stage is to identify key events. So let's look at the situation for prospective, mature postgraduate students at Birkbeck. So we came up through a process of workshopping with these 5 key events. And so from the left, we've got an awareness of Birkbeck. Then in the journey, the prospective student decides, okay, Birkbeck is one of my options. Then they reach that decision point, decision to apply. They receive an offer, and then they go on to enrollment. So that's the ideal journey. Actually, there's an important sideline on that journey, and that's the one where a student goes through as far as the decision to apply, they make an application, and they get a rejection. Each of these key events defines the endpoints of a stage. And so we look to those stages, and each of those stages is characterized by a set of questions and tasks that a user might have. And we spent time, again, in workshop situations, figuring out what key questions and tasks users would have. So, for example, in initial research, it might be, does Birkbeck offer a course that I'm interested in? For a mature prospective postgrad, it might be, am I able to go back studying? Can I afford it? As you go on to the detailed research, it might be things like, can I combine study and work? How many days a week? What's the timetable? Because Birkbeck offers most of its teaching in the evenings. So what are the user journey mapping workshops like? Well, it's hands-on stuff. The guys in this picture look so intense that they've forgotten to smile. Hard at work, good to see. But yeah, you see in the background on the wall a grid of stages, and then broken down into the different component parts of the journey map. And each workshop session generates a lot of post-its, as any workshopping exercise needs to do. What's interesting here is, so you generate, what we're doing is, in this particular example, generating tasks for the in-depth research stage of the journey. So we've had a small group generate a set of post-its for a bunch of tasks. Then we've had everyone in the workshop do some voting. So that's the tally marks, and that's really important because you start to build up this picture of the priorities and importance of different activities and different tasks. So you do that treatment for every element in the grid. We also analyze feelings and emotions, and as Alison was talking about, a really important aspect of understanding the user journey is understanding their feelings and emotions. So we see here that in the early stages, you've got building hunger for information. What we found with prospective postgraduates is this uncertainty about being able to study and a lack of confidence that was really a really important element. And finances, of course, were a very important element there as well. And once it moved on to the application process, there was when people needed help, they needed help fast, but they were motivated to push through, highly motivated once they got to that point of a decision to apply. Analyzing touch points gives you, what it generates is a list of, almost a checklist really, that you can use to look at who owns the checkpoints, what you need to coordinate across the organisation. Finally, we looked at weaknesses that Birkbeck had, and we looked at opportunities. I won't go into these, and Jane will talk about some of those more. So you've seen the different layers, the anatomy really of a journey map. And the final thing that we did was to assemble those into something that could be used as a poster at Birkbeck, and it sits on the walls at Birkbeck. It's not intended to be absolutely comprehensive. It doesn't include everything, but it includes key points. And the idea is that it triggers the memories of the people who are involved in the process, so that they're continually referring back to what they did when they went through that journey mapping. And that addresses this sort of sustained, it's not a report that goes into a drawer, it's a sustained representation of the user journey map. And here's one example from the project with Birkbeck. So I have one last slide. Jane's going to talk about some of the implications for web. I just wanted to finish up by talking about some of the other broader impacts, coming back to this issue of the big picture. And what we found was that there was an impact from having done this process that cut across quite a lot of functions and departments within Birkbeck. It provided input into several process review projects addressing the whole set of issues around the inquiries and help processes, around application status information that's provided to prospective students, about streamlining enrollments and about getting timetable information out to people earlier. So, you know, thinking about Birkbeck again, a lot of people who go to Birkbeck are working people, and they work during the day and study at night. And knowing their timetables before they enroll is a really important thing, we discovered. And so one of the things that Birkbeck is seeking to do is to develop timetables earlier in the annual cycle so they can get those out to prospective students. So, sorry Jane, I've overrun by a few minutes. All yours.
Okay, thanks.
And don't forget, whoever's the winner, I don't know if we've got a winner, but the treasure trove is there.
I'm just going to eat those now. So I'm Jane. Hi. Thank you very much to Brian and Claire for inviting me. I am a newbie, so this is my first talk at IWMW. But I did want to say, just reflecting on what Alison said, a lot of what Alison said chimed with me, and it really struck home. I think I've been working on the web probably around as long as Alison, and a lot of that, the political stuff, all that kind of stuff, absolutely spot on. And also I would say I did a talk with Alison about 10 years ago when you were at Bath. No idea about any of those things. So, you know, go ahead, fake it to make it. That totally works. Totally with it. So I just want to say hi to my Birkbeck lot who are there. Just hi. Anyway, let's crack on, because I'm aware that I'm standing between you and the coffee break. Are you guys okay? Right. Hold on. Okay, so I'm Jane Van Ben. I'm Web Content Manager for Birkbeck. Been at Birkbeck a very long time, since 2001. I've been working on the Birkbeck web since 2004. I've done 2 Birkbeck MA degrees. I met my partner at Birkbeck. I don't have a Birkbeck tattoo, but people think I do. Birkbeck, for those who don't know about it, Birkbeck is unique. It's a really amazing institution. It's London's evening university, and what that means is all of our courses are taught in the evening, with a few exceptions, but it's sort of the other way to other universities. Founded in 1823 in a pub. It's a proper London university. And in 1830, Birkbeck became one of the first colleges to admit women to students, so it's progressive, forward-thinking. In 1920, Birkbeck joined the University of London on the understanding that it would continue to teach in the evenings. And then in 2012, which was a bit of a shock to the system, we started offering full-time undergrad courses for the first time because we were known as part-time evening study. And so for the first time, we were in the UCAS process, which was a shock. We normally had adults coming to our open evening, and they were the ones who were doing the courses, and then they brought their kids along to complain. So when we first saw kids coming to an open evening and they were the ones who still wanted to study, it was unheard of. Anyway, Birkbeck's a proper institution, got a silver tap, high scores in ref, and obviously that's really important. Oops, I've just gone through a couple. So about our web, that slide was just telling you that people continue to visit our website. I know they always ask, the numbers are big enough for us not to be concerned about. The numbers keep going up. You can't really compare it because Google Analytics changes what it measures, so we're not concerned about that. Our students are amazing. That was the other slide that I just skipped through. Our students are anyone. So our students go from 18 to 80 now. I think actually we had a graduate at our last graduation ceremony who was in her late 80s. She just finished an LLB. I don't know what she wanted to do with it, but she just was amazing. And we also have 18-year-olds who come straight from school because we have full-time undergraduate study where they study in the evening 4 evenings a week. We have no idea why they are studying at Birkbeck, but they're coming to us. And so the Birkbeck audience is wide, and our market is incredible. They're really complex, but what they all share is they have a Birkbeck attitude, which is that they're really, really committed to studying, and they're really committed to getting their degrees and doing whatever it is they want to do with their lives. So Birkbeck really enables people to achieve their ambitions. So thinking about the web, since 1996, we've had 6 iterations of our homepage, so including an increasing number of redeveloped pages. So Birkbeck, like every other website, I think has sprawled across the internet. So now it's close to 100,000 content items. We don't know what all of that is, which is worrying. So the first one, 96, going back in time, this was our first website, 2003, 2007, getting a bit bigger, 2008, and then 2010, we went for our first long page. So I was involved with this from the blue one, from 2007. That was my first homepage. Prior to that, they didn't really have a content person involved. 2010, this latest one, was the first one where people didn't actually complain to us nonstop. They complained, but they didn't complain as much as all the previous ones. So that was a big step forward. 2016, we launched the Digital Transformation Project, which is a grand title for a web redevelopment project. It's not actually a digital transformation project. We're not totally transforming the digital landscape at Birkbeck. It really is a web project, but we really like the title, so we went with it. That was launched in 2016. We had project objectives, which was to ensure that our website reflected our new visual ID. So Birkbeck's almost 200 years old. We never had a visual ID until last year. This is it, the picture. That is what our visual ID is. People at Birkbeck don't like it. Some people do, but they go on about the colors. I like the colors. I don't know what that's all about. Anyway, image heavy, specific palette of colors. Another objective, really important, was to support recruitment onto Birkbeck courses. Because we're so new in UCAS, Birkbeck basically gets its students by advertising, word of mouth, not really the conventional routes. We get a lot of non-traditional students who have heard about us through other routes. So Birkbeck really, recruitment is, we were really the ones who advertised on the London Underground before anyone else. Now everybody advertises on it, but for a while, we were the only ones who were doing it because everyone else was in UCAS. So the other thing we had to do was we needed to convert the whole Birkbeck website into responsive design. I don't know how many of you were around when Google Armageddon hit a few years ago. There was a big panic at Birkbeck about that one. People were screaming at us, "What are you going to do?" We went, well, it's kind of a big ship to turn around, but we are going to turn it into responsive design. We also had to ensure that the web works for everyone, including people with accessibility requirements, and get rid of duplicate, out-of-date, and poor content. And that, from my point of view, is the big objective. So my team is the content team. There's only 3 of us. We work very closely with the technical team. But from my point of view, we have got to get rid of that really bad content because it's a luxury we no longer have. Digital roadmap, very briefly. Stage 1, we were given the deadline before we actually knew what the project was. That really focused the mind. So by May 2017, we did the customer journey mapping. Delighted about customer journey mapping, by the way. It's something I knew about and we'd never had the budget to do it. So to actually have the budget and the commitment to do it was amazing. Develop a new web design for which we used an agency called Pentagram, and then web build stage 1, which was the May 2017 deadline, was apply the new design to our homepage, all our course listings, and various other critical pages. And so, part of the Birkbeck landscape, but not the majority of it. So the customer journey mapping, this is the meat in the sandwich for this thing, is what did we learn? We learned loads. So it was really, what we found is it's hard to find important information. For a website where your course information is the most important information on your website, this first thing was a bit of a shocker, that is problems with course finding. So we had to do something about that. Bursaries and scholarships. Not easy to find that information. For Birkbeck students, that's incredibly important. A lot of people are mature students, and they can't actually do our degrees unless they get a bursary or scholarship. So for us to keep that information hidden from them is kind of mean. Student service information, so that again was really hard to find all over the place, and also the content was maintained by about 85 people. So we had this terrible, terrible website which had our student service information, and we found that 85 people had access to it, and it was 1,500 pages. The financial support information itself was about 200 pages on its own. A lot of that was out of date. I mean, that's not great. And it was at a time when we first sort of worked on that years ago, there was no other information about part-time funding in 2012. Birkbeck website was the only place you could really find it because we preceded the government in presenting that information because it was more of a priority for us than it was for them. So for us, for financial support information is really, really important on our website. Something else, which was a bit of a blow. So all of our courses are taught in the evening. And the research that was done by Headscape said that people didn't know that teaching was in the evenings. And so they showed up at our courses and went in the daytime and went, "Where are your daytime courses?" And we went, "You're going to have to hang around here till 6 in the evening because that's when the course is." And sorry about that, that is a bit of a shock because you have no evenings. You're studying at Birkbeck. I mean, that is a big, big thing. in terms of managing expectations, I think perhaps we failed. So our website, we thought, well, it is something, we're going to have to do something about that. That's not the only thing about Birkbeck that wasn't always clear. Headscape told us that we're hiding our light. It's not easy to find out how Birkbeck does in national and international rankings. We're kind of late to a lot of rankings because of the not full-time undergraduate thing. Birkbeck traditionally was not in rankings. It wasn't an issue for us. Some international rankings were because it was postgrad, but at undergrad, we weren't. So when we are in rankings, we'd like that, and we're doing well, we'd like people to find that information, but we didn't make that easy either. So National Student Survey 2016, and I know people have issues about the National Student Survey, but nonetheless, our students do look for it, is we had top scores UK-wide for various sorts of things, #1 in London for economics and English. And we asked students, did you know any of that when you applied? And they didn't, because we didn't tell them about it. Or if we did tell them, it was on a department website, on a paper that an academic submitted that nobody ever downloaded. Something else, Chris touched on this, practical details really matter before enrollment, and just in the interests of full disclosure, we haven't sorted out the timetable issue. People are still getting their timetables the week before they start. So that's not something that has been fixed. It's something that we've been aware of. We are on a journey in relation to these things, but we haven't sorted it out, and that's for systematic reasons. Course handbooks, really important. Reading lists, really important. Birkbeck students are very keen. They want to do some studying in the summer before they actually start, and we didn't make that information available. So all of these things went into our thinking. Another thing about Birkbeck students is very, very often at a Birkbeck open evening, a student will come up to us and they'll say, I just don't know if I can do it. I haven't been in education for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. I haven't done it. I don't know if I can actually do it. So there's a lack of confidence. And then conversely, what we have is young students coming along going, I don't want to be the only young person in the class. I just don't know if I can do it. So we're hearing the same anxiety from different students and, not so sure about their study skills, etc. We made it impossible for them to find that information as well. I mean, I think we did a really good job on making it really hard for them to find it. So we know the ones who are actually studying with us are really amazing because they managed to find all that information and start with us. Other findings? Talking to Birkbeck staff can be transformative for our students. So once they got off our website, if they actually managed to find a human being who could answer their questions, that was them converted. Now you can imagine it wasn't that, it doesn't happen all the time. People have the converse experience, which is that if they meet people who don't answer their questions, and at the time our front-facing student service area really didn't answer a lot of questions, they then weren't converted, and quite the opposite, they went elsewhere. So that was really, really helpful, and really helpful for us to feed back to Birkbeck staff. Our website's really important to prospective students. They told us that they visited it hundreds of times over 2 to 3 years. I don't know what the decision-making timescale is for other students, but for Birkbeck it's about 3 years for traditional students to decide that they're going to study at Birkbeck. And then our students worked really hard to find the information they need, so we didn't make it easy for them. So the next step in this journey for us, and it really was that we should have a web design. So the web design process was a meeting between Chris, and I have to say thank you to Chris because he sat in our basement and interviewed students for I don't know how many evenings when it was really dark because it's an evening study institution, and we would just leave him there. So that was really nice. It was really great. We were really grateful for that. But the development of the design, we met with Pentagram, CJM researchers to understand the problems. We had 3 meetings. The design concept was agreed, and a style guide was developed by the designers who gave it to us so that it could be implemented by our technical team, the head of which is up there. The agency came up with these web design guidelines, and for us they were quite radical. So this was very, very different to what our website looked like when we first went and talked to them. Simplify and clear away clutter. We had a structure, and we still have, because we're still in the process of redeveloping our website. If you get onto the Birkbeck website and you throw a stone, you're going to hit a page that has 3 columns. The right-hand side tends to have extra stuff in it, and what our students told us is it looked like advertising, it looked like clutter. It just looked like clutter. We had student profiles in our right-hand column because everybody said they're really important to our students. Our students never looked at them because they thought it was an ad. So get away from clutter, push up the content, reduce the steps to get to the information, connect the content, surface a story on every landing page. So not on every page, but our news and events was only available really from our homepage. It wasn't available anywhere else, so we wanted to make that available elsewhere. Create hierarchy. Flatten the hierarchy, actually, was what we did, and then don't be afraid of long pages. Sorry. Okay, so one of the projects we had was the study skills information, where we had 1,000 plus content pages, 1,200 files. We reduced that to 100 content pages and 56 files. So that's our student service information now, and it's so much easier. Basically, within 3 months of going live with this website, we had more page views in this area of our content, even though it was a fraction of the information that we previously had. We had more engagement, and overall, we knew that people were finding the information they wanted because they were asking the right questions. Our new homepage. So this big hero images, big pictures, very dramatic change from any of our previous homepages. And I have to say, when we went live with this, we did get some really great feedback, I have to say, even from academics, which was pretty much unprecedented. But we also got feedback from people who absolutely loathed this. And I don't want to be ageist, but they were older than 50. So these people really hated this design. And we had an email from a head of one of our schools saying, okay, in effect, he said, right, the joke's over. Could we revert back to the real homepage? And so, you know, I don't think any of us answered that because we were so flabbergasted. We just thought, we don't know how to tell you this. We just redeveloped the whole thing. And another thing, research, they said it's too recruitment focused. I don't know if you get this sort of feedback from your academics. They said, yeah, you know, we're a university. We should be talking about research. This looks like you're just interested in recruitment. And we went, we are really interested in recruitment. So on the top bar, you can see it says research. We actually put that in just to keep them quiet, and it has worked to some extent. That's on mobile, obviously responsive. Another thing is, just very quickly, is I was at a leaving do, and somebody told me that the big image at the top was too big for the screen, for her screen. And I thought, I don't know what you mean. I said, what do you mean? She said, it's just too big for the screen. I said, I don't know what you mean. It's too big for the screen. She doesn't fit on my screen. I said, it should fit on your screen. Anyway, in the end, it just turned out she didn't like the big image. She thought everything should be above the fold. So this is the kind of conversations that we've been having, but nonetheless, we know it is working for us. Statement tiles. This is not radical at all, but honestly, this has made a big difference to people finding out about us. So we have statement tiles on our landing pages telling you something about Birkbeck. It's just a statement. It takes you off to another part where people can find out more information. But we didn't previously have this, so for us, this was quite radical. And that came directly out of the customer journey mapping, addressing that concern about the no light under the bushel. Something else is, we've put news events and blogs, podcasts. We didn't have access to blogs or podcasts on our website anywhere before. We've now put them all over the place. So on all of our landing pages, you can get access to this kind of spread. And it means that prospective students are looking at our news and events more than they actually did before. They're also looking at our courses, which is where we expect them to be, but they are also looking at this. Other changes that we made as a result of the customer journey mapping, and it really was transformative. It's informed so much of what we've done, is we introduced new digital standards. And I have to say, I don't know where Carly is, but I think I totally nicked that title from you at your presentation last year. And that's what you do at IWMW for the newbies, is just go away and take the ideas you've got and implement them where you are. We call them digital standards because that's so powerful to go and tell people we have digital standards. That kind of language, it's almost like you have a license. Anyway, so we introduced a Birkbeck House-style tone of voice guidelines, file management instructions, really incredibly important, image instructions, social media guidelines, our corporate identity guidelines. All of these things are now available to everyone. We are adding to them all the time as we add more in, but basically we're now directing everybody to these, and that's really important. Content improvements, this was really big. As a result of the research that Headscape did, we had a whole list of questions that students ask us at every stage of their customer journey. We never had this before, and so we were able to review our content and actually improve it in response to some of the things that came out because we realized the questions weren't answered. So for example, I guess you guys at other universities will have this, but we didn't have an information for parents page because previously it was the parents who studied with us. Well, we wrote that as a result of some of the questions. And in addition, we improved our content in response to the questions because we had a list of questions that we could answer for the first time. So we revisited our application enrollment information in light of student questions. It's not radical, it's not rocket science, but it's really important, and it has worked for us because we've had far fewer questions. User testing, this is something that we introduced as part of this process, and I really recommend it. We're very lucky at Birkbeck. We have someone who does our user testing. Standard part of all of our web redevelopment work. It's led to significant changes to our website. We have 2-stage improvements to search now. We've introduced remedial improvements to our current search, but it's still not ideal. But we've also commissioned Funnelback. I think a lot of universities here, we certainly have spoken to them, Funnelback to replace our site and core search, because basically we're using Google Search Appliance, which is out of support and is about to fall over. So we are making massive improvements, and that will make sure that people find the information. Something else which is great from our point of view is that all developments, including content developments, we user test them before and after go live, and then we amend them once we go live. So nothing is set in stone. We're making improvements all the way along. This is really great. I think I got the idea last year from IWMW as well. Fix It Friday. So when we took permission away from all those 85 people who had access to our study skills information, we actually didn't give it back to them. But what we did is we introduced Fix It Friday, which is where we do routine maintenance. And so now, and we use that term quite deliberately, Fix It Friday, and all requests are put through our Yammer channel, and basically, if somebody wants some routine maintenance, we do it on Fridays. And then we let them know we've done it. And as a result of it, the number of complaints, the number of people who've asked to get access to our website that we actually don't want to have access to our website, they've stopped asking because the work is being done and it's one less thing off their list. Content owners, we've rebranded as subject experts. Again, another IWMW win, I have to say. Subject experts is a really brilliant term. It means they have a role to play. It's just that we're not allowing them on the website. Yeah.
1 minute, Jane.
Okay. I think I've just got off this anyway. Have I? Okay. So that slide, okay, is that we use the techniques, which is CJM. We've now introduced that into our web development. So we do sort of a question and answer kind of format with content owners, subject experts, so that we actually try to get some information as to what questions do we need to answer when we redevelop part of the website. What next? We've launched stage 2. We're now working with schools and departments to improve their presence on the Birkbeck website. Wish us luck. And after that, stage 3 is the rest of the Birkbeck website. Then we have stage 4 and breathe, and we don't know what's going to happen in the future. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris and Jane. We have time for one quick question, I think. Do we have a question? Yep. If you can say your name and institution.
Hi Jane, Alex from University of Bristol. What worked with student services, carrot or stick? Or combination?
Combination, to be honest. And the stick is basically Google. So we do threaten people with Google an awful lot. And the carrots are that we give them really great stats about the improvements that are happening. Is that what, are you asking about how we
Yeah,
get people off it?
how did you manage to get them on side to reduce the content and to release the sort of emotional attachment to all those thousands of pages?
We worked with them on redeveloping it, so we got their questions. I have to say it wasn't painless because we did have one person in one of our meetings shout at us at 9:30 in the morning, A, for having a meeting at 9:30 in the morning, B, for daring to give her post-it notes that she had to complete at that 9:30 in the morning. I mean, I guess that's a non-post-it note time for her. But basically then what we did is we just went back to them and we got them to approve it, and then we provided them with stats. But actually what we've done, which is mostly what has won them over, is we have made their amendments every Friday, every week since we went live with it, and we've let them know. So we always say we'll do it on Friday, and we've managed so far to do all the requests we get, with the exception of when we're at conferences like this, every Friday. So we get through the list. So I really recommend that.
Okay, well thank you for that, and thank you for sharing your institutional story. And what I thought was really great was how you were building on stories that you'd heard from previous years. And I hope next year we'll be saying we'll be hearing about people who built on your story, because that's very much what we're about.
Okay.
So if we can thank Chris and Jane in the traditional way. So just a few domestic announcements. There's now a half hour, 25-minute coffee break. There will be 2 places to get coffee. You can serve yourself just as you go out, or if you go down the atrium past the vendors, there's another dispensing place there. Serve yourself. If you're a workshop facilitator, you probably want to go and get a coffee straight away so you can go to your room and check things up. Some of you might want to get your luggage and go and get your keys and check in a half hour rather than have a coffee, which might spread the load out for afterwards. In your pack on page 15, there is a map which shows the Spring Lane building, and also it's got the James College, but we'll show people or give people directions to where you'll pick up your keys later. And Claire and I will be checking the football, what's happened there. We'll let you know. Are there any other questions or comments? Pardon? Oh, well, I forgot that, didn't I? Sorry, I was running around putting out the fire. But there was another prize that we got. So back in 20th of December, I sent a message out to the various Just Mail list and says, we've opened up the call for proposals. And for those who submit a proposal for this event, which is accepted, will be the people who put in a proposal before Easter, Christmas or New Year's Eve will be putting a raffle for a prize. There was one person, and that was Jane. So Jane, you get a book, you get a prize, and you'll collect it over there. So congratulations. So thank you. And we'll see you all later. Thank you.
you.